So I've never actually shared this about the Tudor Black Bay publicly like this, but I thought now was the time. So let's rewind to the start. It's been over a decade since Tudor launched the watch that literally reignited the brand's modern success story. And this, of course, is the original Black Bay heritage. This is from 2012. It was released in 2012. And since this release, we've had so many different variants of the Tudor Black Bay. It ignited the spark, which soon became a flame. I mean, we had the Tudor Black Bay 58, the Tudor Black Bay 54, we had the Tudor Black Bay Chrono, etc., etc., etc. Let's not forget the Tudor Black Bay Pro, which I actually want as my next watch. It's 10 years later and I still absolutely adore this watch. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing the good, the bad, and also a little secret that I have been keeping. So firstly, let's start with why it's great. The bezel on this watch, the burgundy aluminium disc insert, is simply to die for. Because it's an aluminium disc, it kind of gives it a more matte hue, a more vintage matte hue. And there's a huge difference between this and, let's say, ceramic. And I absolutely love, actually, I would go as far to say I prefer the aluminium disc insert. Not to mention the fact that the bezel clicks, on an aluminium disc insert bezel sound so much better. This does have a fair amount of Rolex DNA. We all know that Rolex is the parent company to Tudor, but I feel like it's different enough that it stands on its own 2 feet. You'd never see Rolex doing anything like the Black Bay, and I think that's partially why it was so revolutionary, because it was so different and it did stand on its own 2 feet. Next up, we have the gilt dial and hands. Those vintage gold tone prints give it a warmth, and it just gives this watch so much soul that you don't see in other models today. It also has domed sapphire crystal glass, and that adds to the depth and kind of vintage charm of this watch. And to top it off, it has an ETA movement. Now, it's no secret in the industry that Tudor now do not do any movements that aren't in-house. So to get a watch that has an ETA movement from Tudor is actually quite rare. It's a very rare thing to have a watch from Tudor that doesn't have their in-house movement anymore, because they stopped it a very long time ago. To top it off, because it does have this ETA movement, it is marginally thinner than the new Tudor Black Bays. And now we get to the drawbacks, the man-made imperfections that I've actually come to love, but a lot of people looking at a spec sheet would say, well, this maybe isn't as good as the new one. Firstly, it doesn't have that T-fit clasp that we can see on the new Tudor models, and it also doesn't have a kind of micro extension thing, on the fly micro extensions, which in summer in the heat can be a bit of a pain. Now, not to mention the fact that the bracelet just isn't quite as refined as the new bracelets. It's definitely been upgraded since the first generation. And then there's the double-edged sword of the fact that the ETA movement doesn't have the same finesse, the same degree of superiority as the new COSC and META certified in-house movements. It also still has the tube, so see on the right-hand side where the crown is, you can see that it has that burgundy tube, and I've heard a lot of people talking about that as if it's a negative, but in my personal opinion, I kind of think it's a positive. It changes the watch's aesthetic so much, and to me, again, it just gives it more soul. All right, so next up on the Tudor Black Bay train, reviewing this watch after like 10 years, what is different between the Gen 1 version and today's version? So there's a ton of changes. Let's just start with the movement. So this has an ETA movement, whereas the new versions have the caliber MT5602-U movement. Now this -U at the end of Tudor's movements essentially means that it's META certified. So the new Tudors are actually COSC and META certified, and they now have a new in-house movement. Next up, we have one that I don't know why they did this, but on the dial of the Gen 1 version, you can see at the 6 o'clock mark, it has the smiley text of self-winding kind of an upwards smile direction. Whereas in the new versions, it no longer has this. Now, again, this is a love or hate. It's something that gives this watch quirk, it gives it soul, but I've also seen people talking negatively about it. They prefer the new, cleaner aesthetic. Following on from that, also on the dial at the 12 o'clock mark, the original, the GOAT, the Gen 1 has a rose, whereas the new models have a shield. Now, this is totally your preference, to be honest. I prefer the rose just because it gives it more of a difference, a point of difference. But it's not to say that the rose is any better than a shield. With that said, I'd love to know what you guys think on that, Mark, because I suppose the rose does have a little bit more history than the shield. Let me know in the comments. The bracelet on the new version has of course been upgraded, and it now has the T-fit clasp. To top that off, the finishing on the bracelet is just a lot better than the original, and also a little detail with the new versions that not a lot of people actually know about, they don't kind of recognize, is that the teeth on the bezel are a lot sharper and a lot more aggressive. They're a lot more pronounced than the Gen 1 version that has quite subtle, soft teeth. This essentially means that on the new version, it's a lot easier to turn. Now, I'm not saying it's difficult to turn this, but I can imagine if I was maybe wet, that might be an issue. Next up is actually something that I've spoken about before, but that tube leading to the crown that is in burgundy here, whereas if you were to get the blue version, it'd be blue, or the black, it'd be black. But that tube, that kind of colored tube, is now gone. And that makes me sad, because I think that gives it so much more character. But again, personal preference. I feel like the modern Tudor Black Bays are more of a tool dive watch, whereas these, the OGs, the classic, are more of a vintage-inspired diver. So let's get to why I still love this watch and why I've kept it for so long, and then we'll get to something that I've not said before. This watch has been with me through everything, through trips, milestones, memories, and holidays. And I feel like it represents a moment in time for me, as well as a moment in time for Tudor. This is the turning point. This is the point that Tudor became the brand that they are today. And I love the historical relevance and impact of this watch. It tells its own story as well as telling mine. To top that off, I love those points of difference. I love that smiley text. I love that tube leading to the crown. I love the fact the teeth aren't as pronounced, and I love that rose logo. I love the fact that it has an ETA movement. All these minor little bits of personality that they've taken out of this watch and made it cleaner, more clinical, more rugged and tool-like. I prefer them being in the watch. And now we get to the part that I've never spoken about this. I never felt it was relevant to speak about this, but I do feel it's relevant now. In the past few years, as the Chisholm Hunter channel has grown, thanks to you guys, thank you very much for that, and the Chisholm Hunter watches page has grown, and I've become more embedded in this community, I've had collectors, dealers, even friends contact me wanting to purchase this watch. And they've not just wanted to purchase this watch, they've wanted to pay way above what I paid for this watch. There was one offer in particular that was literally so high that it stopped and made me think. I honestly, I took about 3 days and I thought, oof, is it worth getting that new set of curtains that I need for the flat? But in the end, I couldn't do it. I kind of realized something in that moment. This watch has been with me through the best of times, through the worst of times. It's been with me through life. This is the exact watch that I wore on the first trip that I ever went to Baselworld. And that is a key pillar in my life in this watch community. It is, I wouldn't say the catalyst, but it definitely fanned the flame which was becoming my love and passion for watches. Selling this watch would have been like selling a chapter of my life, and I just don't think that's something you can put a price on. This isn't just any old Tudor Black Bay to me. This is a time capsule. Every time I look at this watch, I'm reminded of the last 10 years of incredible memories that I've had, that I've experienced with this timepiece. And that, at the end of the day, is what this industry is all about. So 10 years later, does the Tudor Black Bay Gen 1 still hold up? Yes, absolutely it does. There's definitely been refinements, there's definitely been upgrades, but the imperfections make this watch absolutely perfect. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you agree, if you disagree, if you enjoy and like these kind of videos, please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Or follow our Instagram at Chisholm Hunter Watches or my Instagram at HB Lifelens. And I'll see you guys real soon.